Welcome to Two Deep Hokies Under the Influence, brought to you by McCoy's Auto Repair. This is a Sons of Saturday podcast. Robbie, we lost to Florida State 39-17. Are you worse for the wear?
Um, what good teams win, great teams cover. That's all I got to say about that.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good
we
way to put it. It's a good way to start it off.
yeah. I'm doing fine. It was as expected. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. So, but how about I give us a cheers?
Yeah, do it.
Uh, uh cheers to the forthcoming Demon Deacons, because I think we all knew, we all had that glimmer, that small like little speckle of hope about that FSU game, but we kind of already knew what was going to end up happening. So not all that surprising nor all that disappointing, although I think we would have liked to see it go a different way. That said, I think we got a real shot against Wake Forest. So let's talk about that today.
Cheers. You'll see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, I've got an amber globe of beer here. This is just a glorious looking beer. I'm doing the last of my Oktoberfest tonight. And since it is October, finish that off. I might have a pumpkin beer in a week or two, but right now we're going to do Octobers tonight. And I'm sipping on a good one. I'll talk about it a little bit later. Yes, the game kind of turned out as expected. We did cover, as Robbie mentioned. 22 points. I think the spread was anywhere from 25 to 23 and a half. But we covered, and a lot of our fan base, and we talked a little bit about this on Monday, were feeling okay about the
Yeah.
loss. And that comes across in the calls when we get there as well. And I almost feel like it was more okay than I actually was expecting. Like people
Yes.
were very reasonably minded going into this Florida State game. And there were a few things about it that I felt like I actually in the reviewing it, like got me a little frustrated. And so we'll go there soon enough. Robbie and I went over the AP poll with Colby Dant on Monday. If you weren't able to check out College Football Monday this week, highly recommend it. And it ended up being a long show, kind of what happens when you have three guys who kind of all came from the same classes in college, getting back together, talking football. But it was really fun. Colby gave us some picks. We talked playoff. We talked transfer portal. We talked VT, everything. So check that out. It's on the feed. Only thing I'll say about the AP poll, and Colby commented on this, is that Louisville, one of our ACC teams, is up to 14 after the big win against Notre Dame. And Colby was of the opinion that they should have a better ranking than
Yeah.
14. How do you feel about that?
If you go, I highly suggest the episode because, well, I love Colby. He's awesome. You love him. He's so good at what he does, but he's a character and he's fantastic. That being said, he sold me
Yeah.
on he knows his stuff, and I think he got me on the train. They'll probably lose this week because
Yeah, they're
now
going to
I'm
lose to
bought
Pitt
in.
this week,
Yeah,
probably,
that's
right?
exactly how it's gonna go. But for the time being, in this moment in time, I'm bought in.
Yeah. Yeah. Depth chart injury update. There is no more or designation at the quarterback position. We did it.
We did it.
we have a legit straight up QB1 in Kyron Drones. And when Pry was asked about it, they're like, was there any kind of change to that thought process this week? He's like, no, not really. But Kyron's the guy. It's like, that is the change. Like that's the change right there, is that you're saying that he's the guy. So
Yeah.
it makes sense. And I guess Wells is still kind of recovering. Like Andy Bitter tweeted out that Wells was out there working today, but like he still doesn't look all the way back.
Yeah.
So I guess that injury was worse than it looked like when it happened. But it sure made Wells play bad at the end of that Purdue game.
Yes, it did. And that's if it was only one injury. I mean, Drones has legs and is able to get mobile out of the pocket and survive. And Grant Wells was taking some shots. He was not quite as evasive as Kyron Drones has had to be in order to stay healthy. So that's if he only has one injury. I'm sure he's dinged
True.
up in other places as well.
Yeah. As for the other injury notes, Braylon Moore was back. I'm just adjusting my screen here real quick. Braylon Moore was back. He started. Stroman had to leave for a targeting call, which is, I think it's the third of his career and the second of this season. So that's starting to become a bit of a problem. Maybe like we need him out there.
Keep your heads up, and don't hit sliding quarterbacks.
Yeah.
The refs don't like
They're
that.
gonna flag you. They're
Yes.
gonna get you. And
Even if it's not a hard hit, they'll still flag you.
what was annoying is that in that game, Chiron, on that long run that he took a shot at the end. Now he dove forward,
Yep.
but nevertheless, like it was still almost flag worthy because you
Yeah.
just know when it comes to the quarterbacks, they get like that. Nazir Peoples did play, maybe not himself, but it's nice that he was out there. And I'm hoping every week that goes by, he becomes a little bit more like the Peoples we saw last year because he was so good for us. The Pick'em leaders, 4 people at 37 and 23. That's about 61.5%. We got TKN James. Some spread, huh? Hokie Hustler and the Bottom Dwellers. Those are our 4 people in first place. Well done, guys. There's a handful of others that are just behind them, too. So Robbie and I are 1 game apart, both below the 50% mark. We got to pick it up. But
yes,
the spreads this week, someone commented on our Twitter, like, there's a bunch of big ones in there.
The UConn game is in there, which is our UMass game. Sorry,
UMass, yes.
Is because I was picking it. I was doing my picks tonight. It's a 42.5 point spread against Penn State. What are you supposed to do with that? I don't.
It's tough. And I left. So when we do the picks on the show, as you guys know, if you listen every week, we take 5 of the games from the pick'em and pick them on the show. I left that one off the pick'em for the show because it's just pointless.
It's outrageous.
Though I do think UMass is capable of scoring a few points. And like when it's 43, like I don't even know. I don't know what you do with that.
But there's a couple. Anyway, we're gonna get sidetracked really quickly. That was my logic in a couple of games that Georgia was like it was a 37.5 point favorite against somebody, and I just picked Georgia. I was like, yeah, or I picked the underdog, and then Georgia rolled off like 55 points, and I was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, they got Vandy this week. That's what we all want to see, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, the game recap. This was one of those just survive. We talked about it. No injuries. Get the roster intact after this one. Come back and let's win some games. And that's just about all we did. FSU jumped out to a 22-0 lead, and it felt like it was over. But we put together a field goal drive, followed that up with a 16-play, 75-yard drive. That might be the longest drive of the season. Capped it with the TD by Tootin to make it 22-10 at the half. And then we opened the second half with Tootin's 99-yard kickoff return. Not sure where we'd be without this guy. It was 22-17. And glimmer of hope. Thought there could be an upset for like 28 seconds until Benson took it back to the house. He added another long touchdown later in the game, and we lost 39-17. But as always, let me play the voicemails for a more encompassing recap of the game.
Nobody penciled this game in, 6 months ago as a W. I'm fine with this result. They've performed admirably. Fuente would say, I'm so proud of these kids. And I am.
The end result was kind of what I expected.
You know what? I'm actually feeling okay today. You know why? And correct me if I'm wrong, but we went down there, didn't have any major injuries, didn't lose by 50, and Chiron got some good film that he can review to continue to get better and look forward to this year and next year.
This is something to be actually positive about, even though we lost by 22 points.
I watched that first quarter. I live here in Central Florida. I was going to go outside and do some yard work. Figured I'd watch the second quarter. What a way to bring it back.
I had to battle back for being 22 down in the second quarter.
Defense stepping it up. Offense with some great plays. Go Hokies. I don't care if we lose this game. I'm proud of the team for doing what they did in the second quarter.
I think overall I feel okay, but I'm so sick of this team giving me hope in the middle of the game where they go down multiple scores, come back and make it really interesting, and then they just get ran all over for the rest of the games. Bowen called a pretty good game throughout the middle of the game, and then our athletes just couldn't hold out to their athletes.
I bet Bowen knows when to take a knee at least. So there's that.
We have a potential to go bowling. If we play this way for the rest of the year, we will go bowling. Go frickin' Hokies.
Okay, so a little bit more tame on the calls this week. Not so many one-liners and whatnot. But what you heard in there, Robbie, was an overwhelming feeling of satisfaction.
Yes, and that should have been a commercial right there. An overwhelming feeling of satisfaction as I watched this second quarter. Yes, and that's how I came on the podcast tonight. I'm of the same. I saw a random guy in the parking lot of my golf club after the day after the game, and he looked at me. I was wearing my Virginia Tech stuff. I think I knew he was a Hokie, and we just kind of looked at each other and shrugged and said, what can you do? that was about all the conversation was. And I feel everybody on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they are simply a much, much better team, and our rush defense is still terrible. And that was more or less my story of the game. I was happy, like the caller said, that we showed that life in the second quarter, and Tootin is just the guy that he is to continue it into the third quarter. But I did think there was some questionable stuff that went on during the game. Before we get to that, tease. Too Deep Hokies Under the Influence is brought to you by McCoy's Auto Repair in Radford. Who doesn't love supporting a local family business? I've said it before, I'll say it again. That's exactly what you get with McCoy's. From 1980 on, they offer full service, including major and minor repairs, oil changes, state inspections. You can get your whole transmission rebuilt there. Fleet service, everything, diesel repairs. They also sell all your tires, so go there for all your tire needs this winter. And they can also pick you up or drop you off if you're just too busy with work, can't get there, don't have someone to drop you off. So head to McCoy's Auto Repair for all your vehicle maintenance needs, or give them a call. The number's right on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, 540-639-2933. And you can find them on Facebook. Just like that old Hokie buddy, McCoy's is a name you can trust. You know what's a name I'm not so sure I can trust, Robbie?
Any one of the linebackers?
I was going to go with Tyler Bowen, but that was because at least he's one of the coaches. Because we had bad Bowen back in this game. This was a start where on our first 9 plays, we had 9 yards.
Yeah, not great. That was it was tough to watch at the beginning. That's for sure. It was three and outs right off the bat, and just that's kind of set the tone. And I think they had 3 touchdowns right off the bat, so that was not good.
Yeah, and we came out throwing the ball, and I don't want to belabor the point. Everyone can notice it. Chris Coleman talked about it on the recap they did on the TSL pod. Like, why are we coming out after the offense we just showed against Pitt, throwing the ball as much as we did? It was like 7 of the first 9 plays were throws. I think the first 3 plays were throws.
Yeah.
And I get it. Florida State's pass defense hasn't been top notch. We talked a little bit about it, but to just go completely away from your strength and basically hang your defense out to dry because those plays didn't work, it hurts more because they were the scripted plays, right? I mean, those are the plays that you have drawn up beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It would be different if it's later in the game and they're calling them as they see what happens on the field, but that means the game plan was that way all along.
Or you start the game and you're down, and so you got to throw. But no, it was even, or it was 7-0. And it was funny because as we got down by more, we decided to run more. And that was probably in an effort to not get blown out, but it actually worked,
Right. Yes, I would agree. We know, I think at this point, all of the benefits that we're getting from Kyron Jones in this offense and what it does, and it allows the offense to do that was not possible under Grant Wells. And one of those things is not necessarily the passing attack of the team, or at least I should say, regular passing attacks or like ongoing passing attacks. Like that is 2 passes in a row, 3 passes in a row, 4 passes in a row. It does work out well, better, I should say, not well, but better when it's run. We get people on their heels. Kyron's moving around a little bit. They got to defend against him and his ability to move, and then we can go throw something a little bit deeper. Then there's been a little bit more success there.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is there's the argument, or at least the counter, because I'm not sure anyone's arguing for Bowen, that they were doing some screens, some short throws, and that's an extension of the run game, and it's basically the same as a run. My rebuttal to that fake argument I just created is that it is not. And this is exactly what Sirianni was doing with the Eagles at the beginning of last year. And it really bugged me because we had Miles Sanders, a great running back, and he was doing all these screens. And he's like, well, screens are the same thing as a run. And he quickly learned that that's not true. The offensive line has to block differently. It changes everything. And then halfway through the year, or even I think this was in his first year with the Eagles, not last year, because we started off really well. But the whole point is you need to run the ball. If that's your strength, if that's what you can do well, if you have good running backs, run the ball. Doing short passes is not the same. It is not the same.
In addition to that, we are still having issues with tight end blocking. So screen passes definitely do not have the same impact because you are much more reliant on the tight ends on the outside for blocking in those particular instances. In fact, it rides on the fact on that your left guard and your right guard, trying to get to that level, which obviously that was even a struggle, but then you bring your tight end out there. And if you're not getting good blocking, that is not a strength of this team whatsoever. And we don't have the athleticism to do it. That became very evident in this game. The difference in athleticism between FSU and us was off the charts.
Yeah. And it's troubling that it took him a while to figure out we can't run the offense you wanted to run with Grant. And then it seemed like he figured it out. And then we go back to a more pass heavy situation right after a run heavy situation worked. Listen, every game is, you can take it individually, and he had a plan, and maybe if one catch works, then it's all different, but it didn't. And so this is what we're left with to judge. And 12 touches for Tootin, just 10 offensive points in the game. We were awful on third down, just 2 of 13. A lot of it because we were in bad third down situations. We actually converted more fourth downs than we did third downs.
Yep.
At the very least, it looks like we still have our QB going forward. I thought Drones, despite only throwing for 104 yards, still looks clearly like the guy and gives me hope. He had his highest rushing total in this game.
Yes. And there are, I 100% agree there. I will be very interested to see what happens next year with Kyron Drones, assuming that we can put out a competent or more competent offensive line. Because if you notice, when there are snaps on the pass play, he is immediately bolting out of the pocket. He doesn't stay in the pocket ever, not once. It seemed like in this game, the ball hits his hands and he's already kind of running for his life. And rightfully so. It's the smart move because we haven't had a true pocket for any of the quarterbacks all season, but it instills a habit that I think is going to be very hard to break if we can actually get an offensive line next year. But I do think he is doing what he needs to keep the plays alive, to see if he can manufacture something, see if a wide receiver can get open, see if he can make a pass. But it's interesting to say the least.
Yeah, and maybe in this game in particular, like, hey, Kyron, you get any pressure? Just go. Because this D line is too good. If you give them more than a few seconds, you're going to get your clock cleaned. And we ran for 209 yards, largely on the strength of his legs and opening things up, and Tootin and Malachi being good. Yeah. And actually, I thought I saw more speed from Drones than I thought he had,
Yeah.
especially on the one run. They said he got to 19 miles per hour. Like, he was moving for a big guy.
Yep. And I thought Malachi ran well in this game as well. And I
Yeah.
know Tootin's, we've talked a lot about him, but I thought Thomas had some really good runs in this game as well.
He did. 10 touches for Malachi, 81 yards from scrimmage. He actually had more yards from scrimmage than Tootin did. And so
Mhm.
that was nice. Now, Tootin, when you go 99, we're going to give him the edge. And he scored
Yes.
both of our touchdowns.
That's
But
true.
man, it's a good duo of backs, which is what we had hoped from the beginning. And we're going to have to maybe toy with the idea of going pony backfield or whatever they call it, where
Yeah.
you consistently have those two guys on the field, because why have an extra receiver if there's not the threat that you're actually going to use them?
It's true. Yes. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that could be really dangerous and dynamic to show on the field. And it would help the offensive line more. It would probably help the blocking more because each of anybody that's blitzing or coming off the edge is going to have to be a little bit more reserved because they don't know which way and they don't want somebody getting on the outside of them. So who knows? I don't think it's a bad idea at all.
I want to see if he'll play with it at some point. But even Bryce Duke broke a long run in this game. Now, we had a handful of fumbles, and
Yes.
Chance Black got in there and fumbled. Like, he has barely played this year. He gets in there and he fumbles. Uh, I think all three running backs had a fumble,
Yeah.
or three of them. So, but nevertheless, some bright spots here and there. Lane led us with 6 catches for 51 yards. This is all in an effort, like, to see what we can do for the rest of the season against games where it seems like it's a reasonable chance to win. The thing that kind of upset me was that we come back, it's 17-22. And if maybe we don't screw up so much in the beginning and have such poor offensive output, maybe that game could have been tied. Maybe we could have taken a lead with that run back. But instead, we're still down. And that's an impossible hole to dig out against a top 5 team. Like, you're just not going to do that. But
With
the
the
fact
weapons that they have. Yeah.
right, exactly. I mean, and yeah, and we'll get to the defense in a second and why it was impossible to dig out of that hole. But we've made it so hard on ourselves in a number of games by getting down repeatedly. That shouldn't happen against some of the upcoming schedule. Like,
Yep.
it really shouldn't. And if it does, well, that's a bigger problem. But let's move to the defense. I'll let you hit the defense first. What were your initial observations from what went on Saturday?
When Johnny Wilson got hurt, I never root for anybody to get hurt, but I was like, oh my goodness, that is the best thing that could happen to us. And then he was coming off the field. He's only 6'7", but I swear to God, when that guy was coming off the field, he looked like he was 7'5". Like,
Yeah.
he was twice the size of the trainer walking next to him, almost like 2x the size. And I was like, holy shit, that guy is huge. Very big. Defense. Our linebackers, I know there was the Pitt game. Okay, let's take the Pitt game and set that aside for a moment. Our linebackers look like they haven't played football before. They are taking the bait on even the most benign, minuscule fakes or deception that's being thrown out there by the offense. Like, I wonder sometimes if the offense comes off the field and kind of laughs and they're just like, oh, all I did was this with the ball, and all the linebackers bid on it. And they're biting on it, the misdirection. They're getting caught in the A gap, like in the center, and it's leaving the ends wide open. That happened on at least 3 or 4 plays. They are missing tackles. That two, obviously the Trey Benson tackle, and those were not. There was nothing special about either of those runs, like, whatsoever. That was, and the offensive line telegraphed where the ball was going to go. Everybody kind of moved. French talked about this in his article. Everybody knew where the ball was going, and we looked like we had no answers whatsoever. And It's really demoralizing to watch. It's a challenge, and I know they buckled down later, and they had they did a little bit better, but and I know they were not given a fair hand given what happened early in the game, but there were just really really bad play at a lot of different points.
Yeah, they're struggling so mightily, and it's it's disappointing because yeah, it's Florida State, but the one thing Florida State wasn't doing great on offense was running the football with the running backs. And that's exactly what they did tremendously well in this game. They had 282 yards rushing. Benson had 200 on 11 carries. You said on Monday he had like 140 on 2 carries or
Yeah,
whatever it was.
yeah,
Uh
85-yard and a 62-yard run, both for
Right. I
touchdowns.
mean, 18.2 yards per carry for Benson. And Travis was very good. Even though he didn't eclipse 200 yards passing or even total, I think. He didn't need to. I
No.
mean, that wasn't what they needed to do to win the game. He still had 2 touchdowns and a 74 QBR. He did his thing. And FSU did their typical lull of like they got like 1 yard in the second quarter or something. Like we were able to hold them down to a few 3 and outs. But then they exploded, and it's easier to explode when your linebackers, like you said, are going the wrong direction, not fitting the gaps, taking every fake. And it stinks. On the season, Virginia Tech 123rd in rush yards per game and 120th in average yards per carry. I mean, we're talking 5.15 yards per carry for the
It's
opposing offenses. And I tweeted out this week, since 1973, that's 50 seasons, there has been precisely one season where Virginia Tech has allowed 5 yards per carry, and that was 2018. And keep in
Wow.
mind, that was the ridiculous Pitt game where they averaged 13 yards per carry, and Georgia Tech, which
Mhm.
was an option team and ran all over us for 49 points. We even have played an option team this year. The season's
No.
only, and I realize we played some strong running attacks, but we're talking about Rutgers, Purdue, Marshall. We're not talking, old school Wisconsin here.
Mhm.
So this might be the second season in 50 years where we allow 5 yards per carry. It
And
is so bad. I'm sorry. Go
two
ahead.
of those teams were struggling in the run, including FSU. That if you looked up anything prior to this game about FSU, the number one thing was they're still doing it. The team still looks good. Passing looks good. Travis is playing well. They're
Mhm.
not running the ball very well. It's really suspect. It has not looked good. It doesn't look good. And if go find an article on this game, find anyone you pick, and get through the first paragraph without it
Mhm.
saying FSU has got its running attack figured out. And
Yeah.
no, they don't have their fucking
No,
running
they
attack
don't.
figured out. No, they that was handed to them on a platter, right? With you know, it was
It hurts,
it's
man,
tough.
because
Yeah.
we thought we had maybe turned the corner against Pitt because despite struggling on offense, Pitt runs the football. Narduzzi likes
Mhm.
to run the football, and we were able to hold them. Well, I think this proves just how ridiculously bad Pitt's offense was
Mhm.
because to put this out there, I know it's Florida State. I know they out athlete us everywhere. I know Benson's a good back, but 282 yards on
Yeah.
the ground to a team that was, I think, averaging less than 190.
Yeah.
Like it's a bad look. Kelly Lawson had 6 tackles, our only hurry, and 2 pass breakups. He is trying. I don't think the guy is coached very well.
I know.
Like I think like he's playing on raw ability right now. And the only thing I'll fault him on in the game, other than a few, like clearly you can fault him on taking bad lines, but like that's more on coaching to me at this point.
Yes.
He dropped the interception, and
Mhm.
that interception, the very next play, they scored a touchdown,
Yep.
and that really hurt. Otherwise, I feel like Kelly's doing the best he can based on what he's been served up.
It it looks either one of two things is true. Either they're getting coached correctly and all of them suffer Grant Wells under the light syndrome. Like that is one possibility. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that they're being coached very well. I don't think they're being taught the what the offense is trying to make them do and what they should be doing. And those are not the same thing for a linebacker. Like the offense is trying to bait you and get you to move into this position so then you're out of position and it opens up the edge or there's nobody in the gap there or that is what the offense is trying to make you do. And but you need to be patient and you need to read the broader like scope and understand offenses to know they're actually probably doing this or they're actually probably going to run the ball over here or it's it's an RPO. Whatever the case may be, it looks like they're taking their initial read of what's happening at face value and moving on it. And then because you can see their feet. If you go back and watch the film and check out French's article where he does the slowdowns and he does it all in slow motion, you can see their feet get bottled up. And both, the middle linebacker and they'll be moving this way, and you see their feet get angled, and all of a sudden you see the oh shit moment where they see that it's going the other direction, and their ankles are like sideways, and then all of a sudden you see this like overcorrection the other way. They're way out of position. There's just no chance.
And what's the thing of it is we know who to blame. It's beyond clear who to blame because Chris Marv is not only our defensive coordinator, he's also linebackers coach.
Yeah.
And so, or wait, is that right? Or I know Sean Quinn's in there, but that's he does like Sams and Nichols or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's on Chris Marv for the vast majority of it. And it's a failure, man. And I do actually think a lot of it is not just like linebacker basics. It's scheme. It's like they're not getting the scheme. I don't know how 6 games in you're still not getting the scheme, but that's just where we're at right now. 10 tackles for Stroman, and he didn't even play the entire game. Like he might have had 15 tackles had he played this entire game, maybe more.
Yeah.
On special teams, just to round everything out here, Tootin's run back was awesome. We also did give up a bad punt return to Keon Coleman, although he didn't hurt us in many other facets. He did have a nice return. Random stat, 12 penalties on FSU, 12 penalties. So this game could have been worse, really. They were kind of playing sloppy, and it was still a 22-point win. Final takeaways. Do you have any final takeaways from the game?
Sean Quinn does Sam linebackers and Nichols.
Okay.
That's what I thought. Yes, you're 100% correct. Chris Marv's is linebackers coach. No, I would like. I'd like to see improvement. Okay, we got big problems with our rush defense. That's okay. That happens. Got it. I'd like to see it kind of progressing in a good direction, and it's not. It's actually getting worse because now, and you and I have spent 9 seasons talking about this, and I know I hit on it a lot, but I think it's true. Is now the linebackers are in their own head. Now they're overthinking everything, and you used to remember Bud Foster used to always talk about like their mind tying up their feet.
Always,
and he would always hit on that. You can see it happening now. So now you've got players that are not confident. So now, even if you do start coaching them correctly, they already have these ingrained doubts in their abilities and what they can do. And we're on the spiral to just like shit down like right now because everybody is in their head about what's going on.
Yeah. If only there were a veteran coach of linebackers that we could call to come over to Blacksburg to coach up the line. Oh, yeah, that's Bud who's just hanging out. Like, can we get a little help here? Like, what the heck is going on? He's a free analyst. He'll do it for free. Just
hell, just send him. Yeah, he watches the games. Just like put him on effing Zoom on like the jumbotron at Lane Stadium and have him do it from his dock with like a Budweiser.
Yeah. The only other macro stat I had regarding the takeaways would be 118th in third down conversion percentage on offense for us. So we are this contributed to that. We are just really sucking it up on third down, and we've got to get ahead of the chains. I think one of our callers said it last week. I think it was Hokie Hack. Like, when you get 4 to 5 yards on first down, it makes everything so much easier. I'm hoping that's what we can do going forward here in the last 6 games of ACC play is get ahead of the chains, improve this third down percentage. Because if you're 118th and third down for the rest of the season, you're not going bowling. You're not winning 5. You've got to improve that. Before we move on to Wake Forest, let's take a second to talk about Roback. I actually have it on. You can see I've got the hoodie on, the dog on the shoulder, pointing to the wrong shoulder.
Yep.
It's right here. They were kind enough to send a couple of these over. It is the softest hoodie. This is the same company that brought you the VT Polo with the little Virginias all over it. They have the quarter zip now with the little Virginias. That's called the Berg. It's out right now. The Commonwealth is still out. They're offering our listeners 20% off their first order using code 2DEEPVT. They have the hoodies. They have the polos, tees, quarter zips, joggers, women's stuff, tennis skirts, all that kind of thing. A lot of active wear on there. And that's why their slogan is Roback Crave Activity. So go to their site, load up your cart, and use code 2DEEPVT. Maybe your wife orders the next one. Maybe you get the discount twice. I don't know. I'm just a guy talking, but order some Roback because it's this is seriously like one of the most comfortable hoodies I've ever owned. So this is sweet. And Rob, I got one for you. I'll bring it down next time I see you.
Love it. I'm excited.
Are you drinking anything over there? Got anything special?
I am drinking Athletic Brewing. This is another new release. This is the Oregon Strata. It's a wet hop IPA. Non-alcoholic, and it's got that nice kind of green hop color in there.
Nice.
And I'm heading to Oregon next year to go out there, play some golf, which I am
I've
super
always wanted to
excited
get out there.
And it is delicious. The one I miss the different styles and flavors of IPAs. Obviously, if anybody has listened to this for a long time, I used to have IPAs on like all the time. I miss the different West Coast styles, the double IPAs, just going all the way through them. And this is a wet hop kind of West Coast IPA in a non-alcoholic form, and it's delicious and giving me a nice little throwback.
You get that West Coast feel?
Yes,
Nice.
I do.
That's fitting for having Colby from LA on this week.
That's right.
All right, so I am drinking the Firestone Oktoberfest Oak Aged Lager. Firestone is one of the first IPAs we had on the pod. Me and you years ago in your apartment. You were a big fan of it, and I've always enjoyed Firestone. I like the Mind Haze. Some people kind of hate on Firestone a little bit, maybe because they're one of the more old school and they haven't evolved, but I think they've made a lot of good beers over the years.
The Double Jack was one of my favorite beers of ever. I used to love that thing.
Double Jack is tremendous. But yeah, oak aged. So when I first saw this one, I was like, oh man, that's gonna have one of those real kind of like punch you in the face. This is a smooth lager. It's only 5.2%. And it is an Oktoberfest, but it drinks more like a lager. It's clearer, as you can see on the screen, than a typical October. And the finish is really clean. I'm a big fan of this one. Like I would keep this in my fridge and drink it before and after October. Like it's that good. It's just kind of like a good flavorful lager. Firestone from California, 5.2%, the Oktoberfest Oak Aged Lager. And just to do a full roundabout on the Oktoberfest, I don't think I talked about this one, but I had it when I went down to visit Rob. This is the Founders Oktoberfest. And the thing I like about the Founders, the way they sell their stuff, is they do the 15 packs and they're very affordable. Like you can get the all day, you can get the October, and it's maybe $16.99 for the 15 or like a little bit more than that. It's not much, at the most $20, and you get 15 beers. And this German style Marzen is good. It really does a good job of walking the line between the flavor and not being overly malted. So I said the other one had a clean finish. This doesn't, it's not as clean, but it's a good balance of the malt and the flavor of an Oktoberfest, because you want that flavor, but you don't want to be like weighed down with all that like heavy malt feeling. So
Yep.
big fan of the Founders. It walks the line. It's inexpensive. I'm with this one.
The Firestone, do you get any of that? Is it oak? It's oak barrel aged. Do you get any of that oak in there?
It just says oak age, which I have to imagine
Oh.
means barrel, right? Like that.
I don't
That's
know.
what that has to mean. Yeah, it just
Mhm.
says oak aged lager. Like what else would that mean?
You would hope.
But I don't get that punch. Like when you get the bourbon barrel,
Yes.
and it doesn't say bourbon barrel. So it says maybe that's the difference, right?
Yeah, maybe they put some like oak actually in there and then sift it out or something along those lines.
Yeah,
Who
that
knows?
could be true. But I'm a big fan. All right, Wake Forest. It's homecoming weekend, Rob.
Mhm.
Saturday, 10/14, 3:30 p.m. on ACC Network. I know Pat and Billy are down in Blacksburg this week doing a bunch of different events. They're emceeing something. Check out the Sons of Saturday Twitter feed, because they're updating you on everything they got going down. But sounds like it's going to be an awesome homecoming weekend. One nugget I heard this week I didn't know was that Pry said he was coached by Clawson at Buffalo.
Wow. I didn't pick up on that. I didn't see that. That is awesome.
Yeah, he put it in, I think it was the press conference from yesterday. It was like he opened it up with that comment that at Buffalo, Pry was a DB and he was coached by Clawson, and they're not that much different in age.
That's crazy. Yeah, he must have been a young GA up
Yeah.
and coming. So who knew? That is that's really cool.
Yeah. So this year, Wake Forest, they're okay. They lost Sam Hartman.
Yes.
They lost a couple receivers, but we thought they'd kind of reload at that position. Well, they took an injury to a very important receiver in the offseason, and they've been a little bit on the struggle bus. They're 0-2 in the conference so far, GT and Clemson. No one's going to fault you for losing to Clemson, but they lost at Georgia Tech by 2 touchdowns.
Yep. Yeah. And then
what's
the
your
next
early
week,
assessment of Wake Forest?
They look a lot like Virginia Tech. So what you're going to hear some stuff in stat wise and player wise or limits of their abilities or talent that I think mirrors us. But my take is that they mirror us in a lot of different ways. So it all starts with Griffiths, their quarterback, who is serviceable. So how about this? The last game against Clemson, he went 15 for 25 for 137 yards, no touchdowns and no interceptions, which sounds a lot like our quarterback almost from a stat line perspective. That said, what he doesn't have is, I think, the running ability that we know that Kyron Jones does and the physical attributes that he does. He's like a 60% completion percentage of the year, just over 1,000 yards, and he throws a whole bunch of interceptions to go along with not a ton of touchdowns.
Yeah, he hasn't played great. Just that 60% completion. Hasn't thrown for 200 yards against any of the 3 FBS teams he's played so far.
Yeah.
And his QBR of 37.3, which right off the bat, that sounds terrible. Well, it's the worst in the conference other than Musket. So he's below Phil Jerkovich in season QBR. Like that's where Griffiths is at. Now, his PFF grade, I think, is a little bit better, but he's not good. And Robbie put it perfectly. Like, yeah, the stats, we both played good teams last week, right? Like we played FSU, they played Clemson. Both just played the 2 best teams in the conference, essentially. Both QBs have no touchdowns, no picks. But like, I feel so much better about Kyron Jones than I do this guy. Like, because of the legs, because it was Kyron's 4th start. Griffiths is a little bit older, although he's still his first year starting. He started from the beginning of the year. And I just feel better about Chiron in the situation, and his numbers are better. Like his overall numbers are better than Griffiths. Griffiths is a below average quarterback. If you look at their offense as a whole, 97th in yards per play, and they are last in the ACC in offensive efficiency in the FPI. So below UVA, below BC, below us, like below Pitt, it's not an efficient offense at all.
Yeah, their offensive line they have a couple good guys that are grading out well, and then they have one whole side of their line that's pretty much non-existent. And they have not defenses have not been treating Griffiths very well. So there's been a lot of havoc and difficulty in the backfield for him that has not helped his numbers whatsoever. So again, another corollary to Virginia Tech, a lot of offensive line problems that are not helping them. That doesn't make amends for him not being great, but it's certainly not making his numbers any better.
Yeah, and that's probably why the PFF grade is better, is because QBR does not do a great job of accounting for if you have a trash O-line. And this poor kid definitely does. If he was playing behind an average O-line, he would probably look a lot better because they had a lot of faith in him coming into this year. And he does have good wide receivers in Banks and Morin and Williams. Even Wesley Grimes has over 200 yards receiving and 20 yards per reception. So they got guys on the outside that can be dangerous.
Yes.
Ellison, he's a good back. But they're giving up 4.5 sacks per game. They're 130th in sacks allowed per game.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do anything if your offensive line's that bad.
Yeah. And and the running backs, Claiborne is averaging 4.5 a carry, and Ellison's averaging about 5.6 per carry. So yeah, they have good backs. So there are, well, I'll say it again. There are pieces here that could be really effective. There is talent here that could be really effective. There are key gaps in what they have, and those gaps are so significant that it leads to not a very good offense at all. So it's Virginia Tech.
It's so, you're right. It really is so similar. The defense seems improved over the last couple years for Wake Forest. They held Clemson to 17 points and just 338 yards. Klubnik just threw for 131. So the secondary, shockingly, because a couple years back, if you'll remember, Wake's secondary was a mess. This year, they are 34th in pass efficiency, way up from last year, which was 99th. And obviously, at this point of the season, the schedule still factors in. It's starting to factor in less because you've started to play a lot of teams, but they haven't played the strongest passing attacks. Nevertheless, I'm going to give them credit because it used to be really bad back there, and that's the better side of their defense is the pass defense. Overall, 52nd in yards per play, 64th in yards per rush. It's fairly balanced, but I think their D-line is actually a lot weaker than it looks on paper.
Yes. And it does not create a lot of havoc. So praise Jesus that we might have a reprieve here for a week where thus far this season, I will say, this team has not been creating a lot of hurries, not creating a ton of sacks, not creating a lot of tackles for loss. It has been relatively tame up front from Wake Forest. And I'm hoping that will hold true again for this weekend.
And they have, like, their numbers are okay, but it's really about who they're against. Because they had 10, I think it was 10 sacks against ODU and 4 against Elon. So that means they had 16 total in the year. Yeah. Against the 3 FBS teams they played, that's precisely 2 sacks.
Right.
Like when it comes to when they play decent teams, they're not doing well. And I'm not saying we're a decent team, but we are. I would hope we're better than Elon.
And they're playing FBS caliber teams.
Right.
And
right.
Then we played Old Dominion. So we know
yes.
what we're dealing with here. So when they're playing FBS, good decent caliber FBS teams, they are not creating havoc, I should say. They made the exception against 2 teams that are not those things.
ODU made APR look like an All-American.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, Wake had 10 sacks against them. So like that's what we need to realize about Wake's numbers is that they've done well against poor teams. And when they've played any kind of team with a pulse, they're not very good. The linebackers, Roberts and Hazen, lead them in tackles. And when you look at that Roberts kid, he's probably their best player. Maybe you could make an argument with Deshaun Jones or Mustafa, but like 8 tackles per game, 6.5 tackles for loss. He's a solid player. But also, I don't know exactly where all those numbers are coming from and who they were against. The safeties are putting up numbers. Mustafa did it all last year. I think that guy's actually legit at the safety position.
Yeah.
And they got a couple good corners. I mentioned Jones, who has 3 INTs. Anything else about this defense for you to mention? I kind of took some of the stats there from you.
No, you nailed them all on the head. I think.
Both of Wake Forest sacks were against Vandy.
Well, there you go.
When it comes to the FBS teams, they were against Vandy.
Yeah, so one team. No, I think there's opportunity to be had here, and it's not necessarily in passing the ball, which is okay because our strength is not necessarily in passing the ball. So let's hope that we go, to your point, back to the script that we used previously and see if we can run the ball and use that a lot.
Yeah, and in the summer, when we did our summer previews, I didn't even have to edit the line because what I said over the summer was they should struggle in the run game on both offense and defense. And I believe that's going to be the case in this game. It's still true. Better against the pass than they were last year. Still not great. And we have to get 220 carries. Like we have to. That is an absolute must. If you want to do 18 and give Malachi 12, that's fine. But we need 30 from the 2 of them is how I'd put it. The offense matchup plays to our strength also from their end because their strength is really the wide receivers. I know our pass efficiency hasn't been great on the whole, but I still think that's the strength of our defense. And so good. Let them have good wide receivers and let's man up and see how we do against them. It will be interesting to see how both teams respond coming off playing Clemson and FSU.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I think there are, I feel as though it's going to be a tight game, a close game from 2 teams that have some very clear strengths and weaknesses that resemble, maybe are not, identical to each other, but resemble each other. And I think that Virginia Tech ultimately should be the better team when you weigh all of those against each other, is my personal opinion. But we've seen how games go. I mean, FSU was clearly the better team, and we had them, we had that to a 22-17 game at one point before, shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, it's weird because as much crap and stuff we've been through over the last year and a half or so, and maybe at times giving Bowen and Marv and Prize some heat, we generally, at some point or another, compete in the game, get it to a score. Even if it looks bleak, we are able to claw our way back into it to a degree. And so, claw, the pun wasn't intended. But when we first saw this line and we showed it on College Football Monday, Colby was like, well, it's Dave Clawson. Like, I see that line. I see the experience. I love Dave Clawson coach teams. I think I might go with Clawson, but Colby said, like, you guys are getting better, right? And I do think maybe the defense isn't getting better. Maybe the offense is just marginally better. But as a team, I do think we are better than we were a couple weeks ago.
I would agree with that. And
so it's a winnable game at home. It's a good matchup. The line has gone from Wake +3. I looked at it today. It was VT -1.5. or so. So it went from, Wake being favored by 3 to us being favored by 1.5. Line is moving heavily in Virginia Tech's favor. It's homecoming. It's not a must win because where we are, we're not competing to go to the ACC championship, but this is a gotta win. Like, we gotta win this game. It's a winnable game. We're at home, and with how close these teams are, as you pointed out, that could be the difference. It's just the fact that it's in Blacksburg. Like, push it over the edge, make Griffiths think about it when he's dropping back and the crowd is loud. We got to have this game. Is that how you feel?
I agree. And no targeting. We got to keep everybody in the game. Please.
Well, that's why I'm pissed. Is that we're going to be missing Stroman for the first half. Like,
that's why we can't take anything else like that. It's so hard in the moment. I can't even imagine trying to go to tackle somebody and then you got to pull up. But I just hope that we're just don't know. We're going to have some unforced errors. Let's not make them egregious, right? Yeah. Let's try and minimize them.
I'm with you, buddy. 2D Pokies Under the Influence is brought to you by Prize Picks. We're going to do our picks against the spread in 1 second. But you guys know about Prize Picks. It's the daily fantasy app that allows you to make plays on our very own Hokies players, higher or lower yards on Tootin, on Lane, on drones. You can do it all on Prize Picks. You can do MLB playoffs, NFL. So many opportunities to get money in your pocket. Download Prize Picks. They have a great app. And use code MEMORYLANE for a deposit match up to $100. Memory Lane, all one word. Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. First pick we're going to do, Rob. Best game of the weekend.
Yep.
Oregon at Washington. You said you were going there next year.
I'm not, and I'm tricking this. I mean, I had Washington written down here. Now I immediately have to switch it over to Oregon.
Well, on Monday, the line I used was something I pulled off ESPN. This was from the Pick'em, and it's 3.5 instead of 2.5. That makes a big difference in this game.
It does. It does. I'm flipping. I'm going to Oregon. So that the point is much different at 3.5. I mean, that is huge. You're taking it from a field goal to not a field goal to cover that spread. So I'm going to flip it to Oregon.
Quack, 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 Mr. Ducksworth. I'm going with Oregon as well. Louisville at Pitt. Pitt, 8.5-point underdogs. And this is great because we talked about it at the beginning. 6-0 Louisville, 1-4 Pitt. Pitt's been horrible, and the spread's only 8.5. Like,
smelly.
So smelly, and yet I'm taking Pitt.
I think I'm gonna rep Colby and go with Louisville here, but this is a stinker of a line, and all of a sudden,
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, all of a sudden, the Chargers are gonna come out. It's and just put the paddles right on Pitt, and they're just gonna be it's gonna be Frankenstein waking up right from the electric bolt, and just all of a sudden
it's the Undertaker
Dude, it's Halloween, and Pitt is going to rise from the dead for this game.
That's what I'm thinking, man. It's gonna be the fourth quarter is gonna start. And Pitt's going to have a 3-point lead or something. And it's just going to be what the hell is going on?
What is happening?
Because this is old Big East after we left, in between when they both joined the ACC.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some rivalry there. Auburn at LSU. Colby said he loved Auburn in this game. And I'm not one to go against Colby. So I'm going with Auburn.
I am too. And if you didn't hear it, go back and listen. But basically, this game's always close because it is with things are always funky in an Auburn LSU game.
And if you're worried about Auburn's offense, don't, because they're playing LSU.
Yes, that's right. Just lob the ball as far down the field as you can, and your wide receiver will be able to catch it.
Cal at Utah. Utah has that tremendous home field advantage. 13.5-point favorites. Cal has been feisty this year.
Yes.
They've been very feisty, and I don't know what to make of Utah with the quarterbacks and how good are they. I don't really know. I'm going to take Cal to cover.
I had Cal as well. I don't.
Okay.
I don't. Nobody can get get the pulse of what Utah is all about this season.
I know it's really weird. And then Wyoming at Air Force. I had to throw a G5 one in here. We talked a little bit about the G5 and the best teams.
We talked a
And
lot about Air Force and Wyoming, actually. We talked a lot about both these teams. That's why when I saw the game, I was like, oh, we weren't even talking about it because they're playing this
No,
week.
we
were
weren't.
talking about Wyoming and Air Force independently of this game.
And Air Force is undefeated, but they've played a very weak schedule. That being said, they've crushed that weak schedule. Wyoming has played App, they've played Texas. They're 5-1, I think. And so this is an awesome game. One of the problems for Wyoming is they're coming off a league game that was really emotional against Fresno, and they got a big win. So, and the line is too big to me. Like, why is the line so big? And it starts messing with my head. Like, is this a wrong team favorite situation, or is this Vegas knows situation? I don't know which one it is.
Something is strange here. I am going to go in the spirit of having Colby on. I'm going to stick with Colby's favorite of the two teams here, which is Wyoming. And he is all about Wyoming.
He is. And I'm so curious because he can love a team, but when it comes to picking the game, that doesn't always matter. Like sometimes it depends on the situation. And he doesn't have like a power, right? He does his database, but like, I don't think he picks based on that. It's a lot more on feel and research and matchups and things like that.
Oh yeah. He could be telling me that I'm besmirching his name because I'm claiming that he would pick Wyoming here. What I'm claiming is he really likes Wyoming, and I don't know that in depth about either of these teams, so I'm going to go with Wyoming.
As soon as I saw the line, I said, I got to take Wyoming. But then I started second guessing myself. Like, well, Air Force hasn't played anybody, but the line's too big. That must mean they're trying to get us to bet Wyoming. I'm going to go with the Cowboys. I'm just going to go with it, and hopefully they can. If they lose by 9.
You just went full Princess Bride there with the poison scene.
I know.
Into a land war.
Yeah. It's like, I know what you think I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do that. There's a couple other good games. Mizzou's playing Kentucky, so that's basically a big game in the SEC East. I don't know who's going to end up finishing second in that side of the division. We got Tennessee, we got Mizzou, we got UK. Kind of like Mizzou in that game, but UK is favored 2.5. Miami at UNC, huge game, really big game. One of the reasons I took UNC to potentially go to the ACC championship game is because they get that Miami game at home. And Miami is now, are they going to come out angry because of the way that game ended, or is it going to screw them up mentally?
Yeah, that could be. Let me. We went relatively quick tonight, so I can ask you a question quick. What do you think? And I'm looking up his stats because I don't know this off too. What do you think? Drake May is not getting a lot of recognition this year in terms of even top 6 quarterbacks in the country. I saw a list the other day, and he is not really showing up on anything. What's your take?
Yeah, so Drake May, it's almost like the recognition is expected, and there was a ton of it before the season. But during the season, he's kind of it's been a little quieter because he hasn't done the 5 touchdowns again and again and again like Penix. His numbers have been pretty good. I know like the last couple games, like he's done really well.
72% completion percentage. Here's why. Because he's got 8 touchdowns, but he's got 4 interceptions. Okay. So that everybody just writes him off because
he's not putting up the TDs.
Yeah. But 72% completion percentage.
He's having a great year, and he's awesome. And the thing about it is, you're not going to win the Heisman throwing for that few TDs through half the season.
Yep.
But he just got Tez Walker back for the NCAA thing. They have a ton of weapons on the outside. They've got good running backs. I think they're going to beat Miami. Like they have been so solid. I don't know if they're going to cover the 3.5, but
Mhm.
they haven't wavered, which is very unlike UNC. And so Miami to me, it wasn't just because they lost because they didn't kneel. It's Miami. And it's just so hard to believe in them until they do it. And they've already lost a game. They need this one. So is this going to be desperation Miami? Is this going to be angry Miami because of the reaction? Or is this just going to be UNC taking care of the business that they've been doing? I'm so curious as to how this plays out.
So nobody's been within 2 touchdowns of UNC all season, and that's against Syracuse, Pitt, South Carolina, Minnesota, and then except for App.
Yep.
But App we just talked about on the podcast as one of the 2 in or making it to the Sun Belt Championship game.
Yeah,
That's who
and
we
they
said
screwed
because
up.
JMU.
They
Yeah.
screwed it up a little last night because they lost to
Oh, did they?
Coastal. Yeah, they ended up
Okay.
losing that game. They came back. Coastal got all over them, but
Mhm.
they came back. They tied it up. McCall came through, and I was skeptical that new Coastal staff. They've started to turn a little bit of a corner on Coastal, and I cannot believe McCall's still there. Like
Yeah.
it's
Nuts.
ridiculous. But yeah, App lost last night, but they're a solid team, and when they play UNC, they play hard, and they
Mhm.
almost beat them last year. They almost beat them this year. So I don't read too much into that score. But you're right. They have been the Syracuse game. I know Syracuse is like a little depleted, but like they took care of their shit in that one.
Yeah.
So I like UNC. I just think that's going to be a tight game. 2 good quarterbacks going at it. Can't wait. And then USC at Notre Dame. We didn't pick it. It's 2.5. Notre Dame's the favorite. Talked about it with Colby. He likes the Irish. I think I like the Irish too, but Caleb Williams, like I wouldn't be betting this game. Like
Yeah. No.
like this is not a game I would want to bet because Caleb Williams is just such an X factor, despite the USC defense being terrible.
Yep. I agree.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for the podcast. Thanks for listening. I think we're going to get a win this weekend. I certainly hope we do. It's a winnable game. We got other winnable games going down to Syracuse in a couple weeks. Got NC State, we got UVA, and we got BC, and all of these teams are beatable. And so, are there 4 wins there? Can we get 4 wins and can we get to a bowl? I think it's possible.
It's certainly possible. I am hoping. I'll tell you what. If you lock down those linebackers and you lock down the rush a little bit, it is extremely feasible just by doing that.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Just if you just found a way to get the rush defense really tightened up and solid, that right there would do it.
I mean, you got to do something with. I know they've been hurting at the safety position, but if Nazir can get a little bit more healthy, Stroman's not targeting people. Just play one of them like an extra linebacker or something. You got to do something. And I'm hoping the staff can figure it out. But until next week, when we're celebrating a big win over Wake Forest, go Hokies.